Okay, so let's start with number 9 on the review. So you have 3 tests that are equally weighted. So you have what? An 84, a 76, and then a question mark here. And you want the average to be 83 or higher. So 83. So remember, average means steal from the rich and give to the poor. So one way to do this is view it as if they're all 83. This one has 1 extra point to make this a 77. This guy has to be 83 plus this test has to have enough to make this guy an 83. So this guy needs what? 6 more, is that right? So if this guy needs to have 6 so that it can give that 6 away to this guy, then 83 and 86 means that the minimum grade would be an 89%. Now, the other thing you can do is do algebra now, because algebra is just real life. So in real life, you would add the 3 scores, except you're using an X because you don't know one of them. And in averaging, you'd add them up, divide by 3, and you want the answer to be an 83. And so remember, to solve equations, you do order of op backwards. Fraction bars act as a grouping symbol, so you'd add first, then divide. So add first, and then you divide by 3. So we're going to go backwards to solve the equation. So instead of dividing by 3, we would multiply both sides by 3. So, and that would cancel out the divide by 3 part. And so you get this plus this. You can add those together if you want, or subtract twice, doesn't matter. I'll just add them together. And then 83 times 3 is 249. And some people might do that intuitively, because if the average is 83, that means they all would be like 83. So they'd multiply by 3 to get the total and then subtract these two. And maybe they don't write an equation, but it's the same idea. And then to undo adding, you would subtract, which again is subtracting the 2 test scores that you already have. And you'll still end up with that 89%. So either way, if you do algebra, you're going to get it. You could guess and test, you know, guess 85, guess 84, guess 83, something like that. Those would all work. All right, go ahead and try number 10. There's 2 equations there. Solve them and check them. Okay, so to solve equations, you want x's on one side, numbers on the other. So I'm just going to put my x's over here and my numbers over here. And again, you're doing order of op backwards. So there's some add and subtract in here, but there's also some multiply and divide going on. So we're going to go backwards. We're going to get rid of this first. So you always use adding, subtracting to move things. So to get rid of this minus 8x, I'm going to add 8x to move it to the x side. And I just chose x's on the side. You could do it the other way around. See how you still have add and subtract, so you're still undoing this. So to get rid of subtracting 16, I'm going to add 16. So if you have variables and numbers on both sides, you're going to end up adding or subtracting twice to get everything to where you want it to be. All right, so notice there's the boxes are on one side, or your variables on one side, numbers on the other. So I have no adding and subtracting left. So when I do multiply and divide, I'm going to undo. So to undo multiply, you would divide both sides by 10. Because your goal is to get 10 divided by 10 to get 1x. And so I get 2.6. To check my answer, you just sub it back in. So you take this this answer that you have here, and you're going to shove it right back into where you had it. So you're going to take 2 times 2.6 minus 16, enter, and I get, what, a negative 10.8. And then you're going to put it over here. So you're going to take 10 minus 8 times your 2.6, enter, and I get another negative 10.8. So I know they're balanced. I know the left is balanced with the right, so I know I'm right. All right, let's look at the next equation over here to the right. So let me scroll down a little bit. Okay, so this one we have x plus 8 equals 6x minus 4 minus 3x plus 8. Okay, so before we can move things around, we kind of need like our x's in a pile and our numbers in a pile. And they are over here, but not over here. So I'm going to have to do the distributive property to distribute that over. So on this side, I still get x plus 8. That it hasn't changed. 6 times x is 6x. Minus 6 times 4 is 24. Like a distributor, you're giving it to everything. Kind of like, I don't know, Pepsi distributor. I take Pepsi to every single store. This negative goes with it, so negative 3x and negative 24. All right, so before I'm going to start moving stuff, I need to simplify. This is collecting like terms, so cats and cats, dogs and dogs, or you know, x's with x's, numbers with numbers. So let's see, what do we get? 6x minus 3x is 3x. Negative 24 and another negative 24 is a negative 48. All right, so notice now I have all my x's with numbers, x's with numbers. So now I'm ready to do order of op backwards. So I'm going to deal with the add and subtract first and then move backwards. So I don't know. I'm going to bring my x's to this side and my numbers over here. And again, you can pick. I like to keep my x's positive, so I kind of look ahead to do that, but not a big deal. So add to get rid of that positive x, negative x. And again, as long as they're add and subtract anywhere in the problem, you are going to be using add and subtract to undo it. So 8 equals 3x minus x is 2x. Okay, and I still have add and subtract, so I'm not done with this step yet. So to get rid of that minus 48, I'm going to add 48 to both sides. Okay, and again, the goal of the add and subtract is to get your boxes on one side and your numbers on the other, or your variables on one side, numbers on the other, and so I get 56. Okay, finally, all the add and subtract is done. There's no more adding and subtracting. So now I'm going to undo multiply and divide. So to get rid of multiplying by 2, I'm going to divide by 2, both sides. So x equals, what do I get, 28 there? Okay, now again, to check your answer, you can use a calculator. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this 28 and put it over here, and then you're going to put it anywhere you see an x, and you're going to check both sides on a calculator. So 28 plus 8, if you sub in 28 plus 8, you're going to end up getting 36 on that side, which is good. So then you're going to put your 28 on a calculator and 28 over here. So you're going to type in 6 parentheses, 28 minus 4, parentheses, minus 3, parentheses, 28 plus 8, end of parentheses, and hit enter. And you should get 36, which means you did it right because the left and the right side are balanced. All right, go ahead and try 11. Okay, so let's look at this one. The first one, what's your probability of grabbing a blue marble? All right, so we have what? There are 3 blue. Let's see. I should have done those in blue. 2 red and 1 yellow. I'll use green, I guess. All right, I guess I can use this for yellow. All right, so these are my blue ones. Blue, blue, blue. All right, so probability is the chances that you have over the total number of chances. So how many blue ones are there? I have 3 chances out of how many total? Well, there are 6 marbles total, so 3 out of 6 is a half if I reduce it. Just divide both by 3, just scaling down. And the next one, what is 25%? 25% of 44. Now notice I'm using a percent forward. I know the percent and I know the number. So I'm going forward, so I would multiply. And I get $11. Another thing is I could make a strip diagram and think of, okay, if I had 44 cut into fourths, each one would be 11. And so I want a fourth of it. 25% is the same as a fourth. So if I take a fourth of it, it would be worth 11. But again, percents going forward, you always multiply. Percents going backwards, you always divide. Make a proportion and solve it. So like 3 over x equals 7 over 21. And I purposely made this one up because it's not nice to scale. I can't look at that and be like, oh, I'm going to double the 3, and no, it's not pretty. So I am going to cross multiply. So I'm going to take these times each other. So 3 times 21 is 63. And I'm going to take these times each other, which is 7x. And I'm going to divide by 7, and I get, what is that, x equals 9. Now, when I did this, scaling it across wasn't nice, but if you notice, I was kind of nice scaling it this way. If you know that the numerator, the denominator was 3 times bigger, so 3 times bigger is 9. But usually when we look for a scale, we look between the numbers, but the top number, if you multiply by 3, is the bottom number, so I could take the top number times the bottom number to get 9. But most times we don't really see that. Our eyes don't look for that so much. All right, go ahead and try number 12 and 13. Okay, so for number 12, a negative times a negative is a positive. Positive times a negative is a negative. They don't pair up. Third one, negative plus a negative is negative because debt and debt makes more debt. A positive minus a negative one, you might have to think a little bit. 8 minus a negative 10. 2 minus a negative 1. That's actually always going to be positive because taking away debt is always a good thing. So that one's going to be positive. And a positive plus a negative, you can't tell, because money and debt, it depends on if you have more money, then it'd be positive. If you have more debt, it would be negative. So that one you can't tell. All right, let's look at number 13. On 13, you have 2 minus something equals a negative 20. So you have to be taking away more than $2, because $2 would be 0. So if you take away $22, you would be in debt 20. And then the next one, you have negative 2, negative 1, fill in the blank, negative 5. And so this is a negative times a negative is a positive 4. They pair up, but then you have an extra. So this is going to be a negative 4. And so if you want to figure out, you can kind of like an equation here. You could be like, well, I want to figure out what x is. So you would divide. And x would be a positive 5/4. The other thing is, if you know you have a negative 4, you could be like, okay, well, I need to cancel the 4, so I need a 4 down here to cancel, and I need a 5, and the negative stays. So that might be another option. Probably wouldn't put fractions on the test as far as the fill in the blank go. And then the next one is what? 3/4 plus a half plus 5. So when you add fractions, you need a common denominator. So times 2 is 4, times 2 is 2. So I get 5/4 plus 5. So I can regroup this into a whole with a 4th left over. And so if I add my wholes together, I get 6 and a 4. All right, let's look at number 14 here. I'm just going to scroll down. It's kind of slow. All right, so let's look at 14. If you make 18 crafts in 24 minutes, is that proportional to making 12 crafts in, what, 18 minutes? All right, so there's a couple things you can do. One thing is you could divide. This is what, crafts per minute. So if you divide this one, I get 0.75 crafts per minute as the rate. And if you divide this one, you would get, let's see, I get 0.667 crafts per minute. So those rates aren't the same. The other thing you could do is scale them up. Let's see, what do they kind of both, can I make them both? Maybe, can I make them both 72 maybe? If I times this by 3, times this by 3, I get what, 54 over 72. And if I scale this by what, 4 and 4, I get 48 out of, I believe, 72. So crafts per 72 minutes. So if I do 72 minutes here, I make 48 crafts, but 72 minutes over here, I make more, 54 crafts. Probably another thing you could do is cross multiply. And because we know if they're equal, they would work. So you could cross multiply and see if this equals this when you cross multiply. Because if they're proportional, they have to. And that doesn't work. 18 times 18 does not equal 12 times 24. So lots of ways you can do that problem. All right, why don't you pause and do number 14. Okay, so this one you should make a weighted grade chart. Okay, and the weight is how many credited hours the class is. So we have a 4, 3, and 5 credit class. And then the grade we have to convert to a number. And so that's why we do like an A is a 4.0, B is a 3.0, and C is a 2.0. To get them in number 4. So remember, if you're weighting something, some things are heavier weighted than others. So multiply across, you get 8. Multiply across is 9, and multiply in 10. So we just weighted them. So now we're going to add these up, and we get 27. But again, it's a GPA. It's a grade point average. So you have to divide by the total weighting. So this adds up to what? 12 credit hours. So these are called quality points. And we're dividing by the credit hours. And so what we end up getting is a 2.25 GPA. Okay. Now again, remember if you're going to average first semester with second semester, you can't do that because you typically don't always take the same number of credit hours. So if you had more semesters, you just make one giant chart and put all the semesters together to get your cumulative. All right, let's look at the next one here on the bottom of this page. Oops, I'm going to run out of time. All right, I'm going to pause it here for a second. Okay, same idea. You put the weight that the teacher gives and then the grade that you earn in each category. Again, you're weighting, so you still multiply, and you get 42%, and you get, what, 36%. You add those up, just like before, 78%, and divide by the weight, which in this case, it's 1, so the grade is a 78%. If you put 60 and 40 here, this would add up to 100. So you divide by 100, and this would be like 4,200.